Hello, my name is Lorraine Appleyard and welcome to my channel where we talk about all things of a spiritual nature, including psychic and mediumship development, angels, magic, manifesting, and meditations to help you achieve the state that you want to achieve. In this upcoming episode, I have the opportunity to speak with a medium, an author, and a spiritual teacher. Before we get started, do remember to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all new content that I am putting out. And hit the like button. I appreciate all your engagement. Do, if you have any questions, leave a comment down below and I'll be happy to respond back to you. I thank you for watching, and without any further ado, here is my next interview on Soul Light Solutions. Let's get into it.
Stephen, thank you very much for joining me today. And we are streaming live to my Facebook page, Lorraine Appleyard, Psychic Medium. And I'm going to see if I'm also able to stream it to my mediumship group. But for those that are not familiar with who I have here, this is the Reverend Stephen Hermann. And it is a great pleasure to be able to have you here with me today. Now, Stephen is a medium and wrote two very, I believe, very distinguished, important books for mediumship. But Stephen, thank you very much for joining me today. And can you tell me, just for those that are watching, a little bit about yourself? Let's get to know you a little bit more, please.
Gosh, well, I'm really into mediumship, so I work full-time as a medium. I teach mediumship, and I travel all over the place teaching it. And yeah, I do have two books which are out, and I really like helping people in terms of their unfoldment. And I've been involved with mediumship for centuries, so I've seen it all, just about.
You said for centuries, is that right?
Well, you know what I mean.
Yes, no,
I take a lot of formaldehyde, so you know.
Okay, so Stephen, you know, you've got two books out right now, Mediumship Mastery 1 and 2, and I feel that they're very, very significant in terms of being able to help those on their mediumship journey, and they're to me, they're required reading for anyone on the mediumship path. And what I really like about your latest book in particular is that you've really broken down a lot of things to help mediums get over some of the common pitfalls that can get in the way of our development. So what do you feel are some of the most common obstacles that someone has with mediumship?
Well, it kind of depends, because for different people, it might be a bit different, of course. So you have the majority of people, I would say the major issue is their analytical mind, just in terms of the mechanics of it. Now, the other thing that could go along in a general sense for quite a few people, regardless of their background, is just the lack of confidence, this type of thing, you know, feeling comfortable. And I suppose along with that would be knowing what they're receiving and being able to recognize that it's actually coming in from an external source, as opposed to something that's just, you know, a product of their own mind, maybe on an unconscious level that comes up. And now the other thing, you've got the people who are analytically oriented, which I think is the majority of people, right? They have to learn how to step aside from that. And when you do that, your mind's going to be receptive. The spirits are going to be able to place things in your mind. And ideally, you're going to be able to notice that, right? And then you can convey it. But the other type of situations you do have occasionally, this is less so, people are just really very, very, very open. You know, there's no energetic boundaries. They might feel things, right, from other people on a physical plane level, their environment around them. You know, they go to the shopping mall, they're overloaded. But then if they start working with mediumship, it's really severe because they can't turn it off. And sometimes they really get into, you know, opening up and they'll be going all over the place. They'll go to the shopping mall, walk up to people, bring through messages
That's
for them.
a common thing, isn't it? And let's talk about that a little bit more, because I feel that especially earlier on in one's mediumship development, or even maybe they may be a medium and they may not even know it.
Well, it has to do with training. It has to do with education. So it's a really good thing if someone's really, really, really open. Now, obviously, it's not a good thing not to have any boundaries and to pick up other stuff and just not have control of it at all. However, the natural sensitivity and the fact that one's open, it really is a good thing, in the sense that with a lot of people, it's the other way around. And depending on their background, and that's something they have to actually work through and learn, which tends to be a bit longer, especially if they're an engineer, they're use their logical mind a lot. They're always analyzing things. And then, they have to learn to get past that. So someone who's like really, really, really open, if they learn how to control it, it's a good thing. But see, that's the whole thing. The more sensitivity, the better. I mean, you want to be the most sensitive medium in the world. However, it all has to be disciplined. So you have to have discipline over yourself, over what you're doing, and especially in terms of the mediumship and everything. So you have people who, they just don't know any better. And you'll see this on TV, like they're going through the drive-through at some fast food restaurant, giving the person a nut. It's just ridiculous. I mean, you see something like this is like mediumship 101, stuff that like the very first class you're going to learn. You learn how to close it down. You're learning how to open it up. You learn when and where to work, right? So there has to be reverence, and there has to be like a higher purpose for the communication. It's not like just opening up to anyone, because with mediumship, when it's done the right way, it's something which is very structured and it's carefully orchestrated by higher personalities who facilitate it. So, maybe someone's grandmother is going to come through, but she's vetted, it's planned out. The helpers who specialize in this, they really intimately know their medium, because they work with their medium, right? They're energetically and mentally, they're in sync, they're tuned in, and they've spent considerable time, through just as the mediums learn how to develop. Similarly, our spirit team or spirit band, they're also learning how to work with us and everything. So you could certainly just walk around being open, but the quality isn't necessarily going to be there. And really, you want the highest and the best, and there really should be some type of greater purpose to it. So it just depends, but generally it's really important, the training aspect of it, if we really want to be good mediums and the best possible vehicles for the spirits to work through.
And I like how you're emphasizing the higher purpose to that. And I feel that may be perhaps a misconception, or not having that full awareness, particularly when someone's earlier on in their development, that it really is meant to have a higher purpose in order to be able to connect with spirit, or to be that channel for the spirit world.
Well,
so you
yes. Now you're freezing up just a little bit when you're speaking too.
Let me just put my extender on, my Wi-Fi extender. Okay. So let me just do that. It's
just like mediumship. Sometimes it doesn't come through as strongly as it could. You have to raise your vibrations, don't you? And really link in and attune properly.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, right?
Well, that's what happens, or you take your cell phone. See, I've got my iPhone 8 here. I've had it for over 4 years. If I went to the middle of Nevada, in the middle of the desert somewhere, some mountains or whatever, I might not get any connection. Isn't that true? Or maybe it would be sporadic, or I could barely hear what was coming in, or garbled. Mediumship's the same way, it's the conditions and everything. So we can influence the conditions around us as mediums. We can do things to kind of make it more conducive, get people to laugh, get them to sing songs to raise up the power, but it might just be really dead. So you can only really rely on your own vibration. So we have to, like, as much as we possibly can with our training, develop a really strong connection with them and everything. And that way, it may not be the best it could be, but we'll be able to work through some of those types of situations much better than not putting energy into that.
So I know that you talked about in your book about that sort of personal development and ways that we can be able to achieve that personal development. And I suppose that also allows us to raise our own vibration in doing so. Would you feel that?
Yeah, well, we have our physical body, we have our subtle body, and the energy fields, right? They're an extension of our subtle body, and they reflect our physical health, where we're at physically. It reflects emotionally, mentally, intellectually, and most importantly, spiritually, right? And all these layers of the energy fields interpenetrate. So who you are, it's right there. As a soul, you have all these layers around you, and those in the spirit world are able to perceive that. I mean, it's not like they're just looking at your physical body. They're actually looking energetically at all this, feeling it. They're able to tune into it. And like attracts like, doesn't it? That's the law of attraction, right? What we put out, we attract. In the physical world, we do this with people or situations, but we do the same thing when we work with the spirit. So if you have the right motivation combined with, and you're really actively working on yourself spiritually to the best of your ability and putting effort in that, it's going to really help create a really dynamic, wonderful vibration around you, really beautiful light. You don't want an ugly light, do you? This dark blob of energy around. No, you really want this beautiful light, And I mean, actually, everyone's really beautiful, right? We're full of knowledge, full of bliss. There's all this light inside us, and as consciousness, because we're qualitatively, we're one with God. Quantitatively, we're different. We've got our own identities. We're not the whole, right? We're not the supreme. We're just like little pieces of the supreme, but qualitatively we're the same. So getting in touch with that's really important. And I often say this to my students. Okay, so you have techniques, like in my second book, right? Advanced techniques that work, right? Mediumship Mastery 2. So it's advanced techniques. Well, some of them aren't really advanced, some of them are, but techniques are great. However, what I tell my students is, yeah, you do want to learn techniques, but what you go through in your own life. I mean, let's say someone goes through life, they have like 3 divorces, their husband runs off the UPS driver, or, maybe they have children, you've got kids, I've got kids, right? I would be devastated if one of them passed over, as you would be. Can you imagine, someone has that happen, or maybe their spouse passes over, someone close to them. So they go through this really traumatic experience on a personal level. So that forces people in a way to connect more with God, right? To go within. It also gives people empathy for others. And that's part of why you see a lot of people, they become mediums, or they start getting, like they're 55 or they're 44, and they've gone through some of those things. Maybe they're 65. And, then they got 10 years of training, and they're kind of in this place where they're running everything and doing all this stuff, but they're really empowered in a way that they wouldn't be when they're 25 or when they were 15, you see? Now, if you go back historically, when the spiritualist movement started, they used a lot of kids, adolescents, you get some 11-year-old girl and trance her at Core LV Richmond. I mean, there's quite a few, and they worked through, and it was to demonstrate the reality of the spirit world and life after death. So that's great. However, when you're like 17 or when you're 27, you're not going to have the same potency in order to really work with someone, just because you haven't gone through the life experience, you see, which doesn't mean, because I've been to this since I've been quite young. On the other hand, there's things that I could do now, physically older, I've gone through different things that I wouldn't necessarily have the same insight that I would have when I was younger, you see. So your soul growth, how you work on your spirituality and you apply it in your own physical plane life. Maybe you goof up a bit, but hopefully, you'll learn, and it'll actually make you a much better channel for the spirits to work through. Does that make sense?
It does. And so really you're talking about being able to take your life experiences as a result and using that growth, using that life experience for spirit to be able to utilize you as an instrument. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's completely correct and everything. And you'll see that mediums, they come from all different types of backgrounds, and sometimes, you have some mediums, there's really uneducated, they're not really sophisticated or been exposed to a lot, but the types of people that they'll connect with in the spirit world are of the same mentality, right? And then the people who might come to those mediums for a session are the same kind of mentality, you see. So they're really, God's able to use mediums like that to reach people, right? So there's different types of mediums are very well suited for different aspects and different focuses when it comes to the spirit communication, so to speak, and everything. But actually, in general, it's good as a medium to, the more you learn, the more you educate yourself, the more you're exposed to. Actually, that is all really good, because the spirit will use all of those things to work through you. One of the chapters in my new book is like the multifaceted medium, being multifaceted with your work. So sometimes what you see happen is mediums are exposed to mediumship a certain way. Maybe they're trained a certain way. You've got to work this way. And that really has a lot to do with who's teaching them. And it might be really quality mediumship. It doesn't mean that it's bad, but it's almost like it's in a box. There's certain parameters. And you don't go past those parameters, because that would be the wrong way of doing it. And so what happens is it's great. The spirits can use them to an extent. However, I think it's a really good thing to work outside the box when it comes to mediumship. So right now online, because I've been doing these Zoom courses, I've got, I'm doing this mediumship mastery on Tuesday nights. And that's more traditional spiritualist, evidential mediumship. And then I've got Monday night cosmic mediumship. So that can be a bit whacked out in a good way, but it gets into stuff. We're working more with guides, higher teachers. We get into medical intuition, right? Diagnosis. We get into past life work, more in control in terms of bringing through philosophy or teachings, bringing through guidance, but things that might be a bit not emphasized when it comes to just bringing through proof of survival or the evidential aspect of mediumship.
So you're talking about mediumship having different roles or different.
Yeah, the mechanics of it are the same, but it's not like there's one right way to work or one type of information that's more important than another. It depends on the context of it. That's the way I look at it. So people sometimes are taught, oh, you have to bring through this. And if you're not working that way, there's something wrong with you. And that's not true. The spirit world sets the agenda. If someone comes to you for a session, there may be a real need for a lot of evidence. Maybe someone's lost someone close to them. They're devastated. There might be other situations where someone really needs more of the guidance or the direction. And even within that guidance or direction, it's not really the medium's job to set the parameters or dictate to the spirits of what's said. And so mediums can be sometimes even hesitant about allowing themselves to bring through certain types of information, because they get themselves involved in it. Oh, I can't say that, that's improper, this type of thing. And that's just really limits things. And I think it's important to allow the spirit world to work with us and trust that they know what they're doing in terms of helping people.
So you're really talking about the need of the recipient, the need of the sitter.
Yeah.
Allowing that spirit intelligence to be able to meet those needs of the sitter in the best way that they know how.
Exactly. But also it's the needs of what the spirits, what are their needs? And so the higher spirits are setting it up, but maybe there's the sessions more for the grandmother than for, the great granddaughter, this type of thing, or whoever is the recipient. this type of thing. It really depends on, usually it's a little bit of both, but it's not always just for the person who's, they're spending the $500 for the 15-minute reading with the celebrity medium, and so they want things a certain way. Well, that's not how it works. I mean, you can have a situation where they may come through and the individuals coming through are connected to someone the medium is acquainted with, that just knows vaguely. Maybe a colleague at work, they don't even really know the person that well, who's really, really, really depressed. So the spirits will come through and try to reach, because there's a connection there where they're going to be able to help things. It's
Spirit uses that opportunity to be able to bring messaging through that could benefit both the spirit person and the recipient.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not always I mean, you could be, your husband could be come for a session, you're sitting out in the car, everything's for you. I mean, if they prioritize it, depending what's going on, depending on the circumstances, it's not like you can ask the spirit world, but I think it's wrong to dictate and, I want this, I want it this way and everything.
So there's learning how to be flexible and just really allowing for the spirit world to be able to use us as a tool, as an instrument to be able to bring that healing.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's all about love. It's all about service, right? And helping people, with healing and higher soul guidance and direction that can come through from the spirit world. And that's to help us to get in touch with ourselves and get in touch with God too. So that's what's really, really, really the most important thing. It's just, but people get so hung up with aspects of it that aren't really even, they somehow disconnect it from God, which I think is not so
Very
good.
True. I do agree with that somehow mediumship is not always connected to God or to source. And it may be because a lot of people, I wonder, struggle with that concept of God.
Well, people, for one reason or another, perhaps they've had issues with organized religion or dogmatic, you have theology that can be really restrict people, and there's something to it. But the thing is the reality of the matter is we're eternal spirit souls. Right? We've always existed. We're always going to continue to exist. So this physical life that someone is in is very, very, very short, this particular physical birth. And we're here to grow spiritually. I mean, the material, it's all relative, obviously. There's things in the material world that we're responsible, that we have to take care of. But what's ultimately important is our soul growth. And really with a session, although it's certainly going to touch in on a practical level to help a person, whether it's with advice or guidance, ultimately, it's coming in from a higher and deeper vantage point in terms of those who are providing the information.
So you touched about having boundaries for mediums and sort of not being open all the time, or not giving messages sort of spontaneously.
Yeah, that's like a leaky faucet type of thing. You see this, it's just like, what the heck? I mean, it might really look good on television because it's sensationalistic and it's entertaining and it's really funny, but it's just, it's not what you do. It's just, there's a lot of reasons. It's just the wrong. I mean, unless you really want to get maced, I mean, maybe then you can do that, go up to people. But ultimately, you want quality with what you're doing, and there is a time and a place. And so if you set up the right types of, you're only going to work maybe when you're sitting in circle under certain circumstances, that's when your helpers are actually there and everything. And you're actually learning how to close it off, how to open it up, and how to really properly receive and bring the information through.
So is that how someone learns discipline? Like if someone's walking around being open all the time and inundated by spirit, what would you recommend for them?
Well, I would recommend to anybody who's interested in growth is to sit in a really good development circle, which is facilitated by someone who's knows what they're doing. Now that's subjective because you could have someone who knows what they're doing, and they really might not know what they're doing, you know, or you could have someone just really run shoddy. I mean, I think it's a good thing to be exposed to that too, because then you can kind of compare and contrast. The other thing is, of course, you know, different teachers might be more appropriate or more in sync with certain students, and vice versa. So, but it's important to be in a well-structured, you know, well-organized and run group, because you've got the group energy. And with that group energy, you have the group of spirits who will work with the group as a whole, but collectively, but then they'll also work individually. You know, your spirit band can use that time to get close to you and help you with your development. There's a limitation of what someone can do on their own. You know, I mean, I'm sure any skill you could learn it online, couldn't you? Or you find some manual and you study it. I'm going to do dentistry with pliers. Well, I could tear your teeth out. Or, you know, I could learn how to fix your car online and everything. But, you know, it would probably be good if it was more formal instruction with someone who's knowledgeable, kind of showing me what to do first over a period of time until I was actually ready. And with mediumship, you never really stop growing. So you could be into it, you know, 50 years, you still want to be sitting in a circle and developing.
So that's interesting, because I know that I believe that that's probably where a lot of perhaps younger mediums today may feel put pressure on themselves, even that they feel that they have to achieve a certain aspect in their development and arrive at a certain state. But it's important to understand that we're constantly growing and we're constantly
it's like a journey. You know, you never really get off it. You know, you go from one plateau to another one. Sometimes it might seem like someone just goes, wow, makes all this growth, like, oh, it's like overnight, or, you know, really in a short period. But, you know, in most cases, it's really more of a gradual type of thing. And then someone, in 9 months, they look back where they were 9 months before and they go, oh my gosh, you know, that they can kind of see the difference and everything. But people are very much driven by achieving results. But what I teach is the process is more important. And you really want to have fun doing it. You know, I always tell students, the more you goof up, the better. So I really encourage people, you know, make as many mistakes as possible, because you're going to learn as a medium. And then also the spirits who are working with you, they're going to be able to assess the situation and make adjustments appropriately. You know, it's working both ways. It's really teamwork. I mean, people don't think of it that way, but it is teamwork. You have people there on a subtle level who are making all of this happen and learning with us how to work with us. And how are they doing it? Well, with mental mediumship, right? They're working through our minds. And that has to be, that's a lot of work. It's not so easy, considering where most people's heads are at and what the content is. You know, this analytical thing, all this garbage that's there, and all the emotions that get in the way. So, you know, so when you're in a group, you can actually build up this group energy, which is something which, if you have the same people, especially if it's a close group, it's going to continue to build up week after week, and they can actually do stuff, which is, I think, pretty cool. But I'm not into this whole self-taught medium. I'm a natural medium, like you can be an artificial one. I'm so good at being, you know, I mean, a lot of it too, I mean, with the pandemic especially, there's a lot of like online courses and things, which I think is great, right? Because you don't have to travel anywhere. You can do it in your own home, go to bed afterwards if it's in the evening. But it's not the same thing as when you're actually sitting with a physical group. Whole different situation.
Because of that energy, and I understand, and the guides working with you, that's a very important aspect, I feel, to be able to bring through. You touched on the conscious mind, and I know that can be a difficult thing for a medium to maybe recognize when they've gone into the conscious mind.
Okay, well, you're going out
Like
just a little,
to
the sound quality, but
really have a good understanding, perhaps discerning that.
well, you have, you know, we have a mind, right? So we have thoughts, we have our own thoughts, and we have external thoughts. And it's really important. That's why the meditation is also very important too, because someone needs to learn how to get themselves out of the way, consciously getting out of the way and being aware of everything. You're not going to sleep or something, being aware of what's actually within your own mind. And in the very beginning, oftentimes someone isn't really going to be able to differentiate. However, if they're aware of these things, and let's say they're sitting in a circle and there's an opportunity to share what they're experiencing, usually at the end of a group, I'll have everyone go around clockwise and everyone will share what they experienced during the meditation. And by articulating that, you're going to learn from that. You're going to get a better sense. Hey, I've seen this. And sometimes, if it's part of a group especially, others there will have experienced the same type of thing. But gosh, we all saw Native Americans there. Or everyone saw this green energy that was completely around the group this evening. And when it comes to giving out messages, let's say someone starts to receive things and they're not really sure what they're doing. Well, if there's error, when you say it, when you verbalize it, you're letting the spirits know. And so then they can make adjustments. And even if it's not giving messages, if you're just sitting there and they put things in your head during meditation, well, when you mention aloud, hey, I just saw this when we were meditating, or saw this blue light, and then I saw a tea kettle that was tipped over. Well, it might not mean anything, but because they put it in your head just to kind of make sure, just to see if you notice it or not, you're letting them know, and then they can kind of proceed with it, so to speak. And others are going to also learn from anything that you share as well. So
I see.
It's important not to hold on to things.
And what I understand from what you said about giving things, even if you're wrong, get something that's wrong, and we give it something that's wrong, spirit's able to understand, they didn't maybe receive that quite the same way.
Yeah, well, sometimes people, their mind's really involved, so they get involved. They might make an assumption, or they might think, I can't say this, so they just leave it out. I mean, that's very common. Or they automatically assume something means something different, so they misinterpret things or translate it the wrong way. But it's very, and so their mind could go on a bit of a tangent, right, and add stuff to what they're getting, or embellish it a bit, make it into something different, or like I say, leave things out. Right. So when that happens, there ends up being a lot of error. I mean, the other thing is, if you keep in mind, because it's mental communication telepathically, so things generally are expressed in a very roundabout way, particularly if you're working with symbology, as with clairvoyance. One picture is worth 1,000 words. So to get an idea across, it can be perceived by the medium, and just they don't have a clue about how to say it the right way. It would be just like right now, we're talking, and let's say we cut off the sound. Mm-hmm. Now we can still see each other, and then I'd have to do all this weird, unless we both knew some type of sign language, right? That'd be a bit different. But we'd have to come up with some type of code. We'd have to somehow visually come across in a way where we'd get the ideas, and I'm sure we'd be successful if we did it long enough. However, there would be some things that, I don't know if it's impossible, but it would be very, 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 very difficult. And mediumship's the same way, so we can see with a lot of communications, especially when people first get into it, when they train you, it's very generic, it's very generalized, right? More simple, basic type, often that apply to a lot of people. And that's like a foundation. It's like learning your alphabet. And then you can spell cat and dog, and then you can get, a simple sentence, and then it becomes more sophisticated after that. So it's something where the conscious mind is involved, but you have to be able to put it aside, and you have to be able to recognize the difference between the feeling that comes in with a thought which is impressed in your mind from the spirits, because there is a difference.
And that would become that comes with practice, as you're saying.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. It's practice. Now, when people first get into this too, what I've observed just in general or experienced over the years is that they tend to turn up the volume, like they really want to make people aware. So if someone's sitting in, let's say, a development circle, you know, they're fairly novice, they might just suddenly have this image that's in their head. Let's say it's a green tea kettle. And, you know, then they start thinking about other stuff because their mind's thinking of all these things at work or in their family life or whatever. And then that green tea kettle comes back and it really stands out. Now, what they want to do when it comes to the opportunity to share is say what it is. Why? Because the only reason it's being put in there is because just to make sure they notice it. Now, there may be absolutely no reason, no meaning, I should say, to that particular image, other than just to test, just to see if the person noticed it and everything. But they'll do it in a way where it's pretty strong and it stands out deliberately. You know, it'll keep on coming back, which is one way of kind of in the beginning for people to kind of recognize that something's actually coming in from spirit. Because just like when someone gets a real strong idea intuitively, it stands out from your regular thoughts. Why? Because you're going to notice it, and then ideally you're going to act on it. Now, what will happen as you develop more, they'll start to use more things from your own head, your own, you know, when you think about like frame of reference, you know, things within your own memory bank, things from your life experience or education, and they'll bring that stuff up. And sometimes when someone is also inexperienced, they're not really going to recognize that, you know, that's actually spirit is making that, why they're having that particular memory. You know, they start thinking of their father. Well, you know, and, you know, it turns out the spirit who's coming through has the same name as their father, or maybe in some ways was like their father, passed the same way, had the same profession, or maybe certain personality characteristics, you see. So the spirit world will work with people. Really, it's pretty awesome. However, it takes time. It takes time for them, and it also takes time for the medium. So having patience is really very, 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 very important. And you can't just like rush it. You know, I say in both my books, microwavable mediumship. You know, they want to have it instant.
Yeah.
And it's just like the
Yes.
quality is really pretty lame. You know, it's lousy. It's not good. You know, I mean, you can be very conservative when it comes to this stuff. Oh, you know, you have to sit for 10 years and then we'll let you work publicly. You know, that's not good. I mean, you want to get people actively working and learning as they're ready, you know, regardless how long they've been sitting. However, there's things, you know, I noticed this, you know, 4 or 5 years, someone's been sitting in the group. They've got this energy that's there. It's in their aura. I can feel it and I can sense it, which you don't get without sitting that long. And what I mean by sitting that long is, you know, on a weekly or regular basis, you're sitting in groups, right, to develop it. After you get that foundation, which is kind of like the beginning point, they can actually start to do more with you, you see, as opposed to someone, I'm really open, you know, I've been doing it 2 years, I get all these messages, like I'm on Zoom, and I go to all these Zoom circles and everything. I mean, that's great, but they don't have any, their connection's weak. You know, the attunement isn't what it could be. The vibration isn't going to be the same thing, and it doesn't mean that the potential's not there, but you can't take shortcuts with this work. It's really, really, really important. Again, sitting in circles is the most important thing someone can do. And, you know, it has to be harmonious. And the more disciplined it is, it shouldn't be something that's laid back. And what I mean by laid back is loose. I mean, one of my students, for example, she went to this one group, and the president of this organization was there. I mean, I think there was a good, you know, 15, 20 people in the circle. So they had the meditation. In the middle of the meditation, this one woman who's the president just got up, went outside to have a cigarette. She went and had her cigarette, and then she came back and sat down. I mean, you got some really just lacking discipline, lacking understanding of even how to go about with the circle, which is just going to lead to the mediumship not being very undisciplined, and the medium not really being in control of things, which is not good. The quality is not going to be there the same way.
I like that. That's very, very good.
I could tell you lots of stories.
I'm sure you can, after being in practicing mediumship for decades.
You know, the first reading I ever had at a spiritualist church, guess how much it cost me? $2 for a half-hour reading.
It's a long time ago.
It's like 40 years ago or something. So yeah. It's like nuts. Then they went up to $5 the next year. So.
Right. Now, in your book, Stephen, you also talked about confidence and how confidence can hold a medium back. And we talked about
lack of confidence. Yeah. That's really important. I'm glad you brought that up because so many mediums have that as an issue, combined just in a general sense with all the stuff we've been talking about. But, if you don't have confidence, gosh. So it has to do with, well, you want to encourage people. That's the big thing. Now, there are some mediums who will scream at people. I mean, you didn't bring through evidence. I knew this one medium, and she was actually in Toronto, as a matter of fact. She's from the UK, and she was at Lilydale, and really nice name. But she's just saying when she trained, this is in London, like years ago, her teacher had one of these like megaphones. So when they were working, he would like scream at them through the megaphone. Now, what's really good about that is you learn the discipline to be detached where external sounds. I think that was really the reason behind it, because someone could be doing something publicly, and then the born again Christian in the front row starts screaming at you, or some child starts to cry. I remember in one church once, this guy walks in the middle of the service, and then he goes, "You're all a bunch of, fakes," and he throws some, I don't know if it's like a rock or what he threw some type of very sturdy object, across. So anyway, you never know what's going to happen. When that does happen, you want to be able to keep the connection. However, it's really important in a group for people to feel nurtured, to feel supported, and encouraged with what they're doing. Why? Because they're going to do really, it's just good teaching in an educational type of sense. It's really important. And you have to feel safe with the other people in terms of being able to open up and be vulnerable. So when you goof up, it's no big deal. It's not this competition type of thing. You say, "Oh, Lorraine has more clients than me. She's more popular. This person he has 17 pieces of evidence in his message, and I only have 2 pieces. I'm not as good." This is how people think. They compare themselves, right, to other people. And I try to create, with my own teaching, an atmosphere where people really feel comfortable with each other and they support each other, they trust each other. And that's really important. So if you have that kind of atmosphere, it's only natural that someone's going to develop confidence in themselves, and then let's say they goof up a bit. Well, it's no big deal. And they can be completely aware of how they goofed up and why they goofed up. And they can think, "Oh gosh, well, next time it comes in, I'll keep my mind out of it, or I'll add that little bit that I thought wasn't actually coming from spirit." Like let's say they get the name Mary and they're thinking, "I can't say the name Mary. That's such a common name." So they just leave it out. And the mother's name was Mary, right? But they didn't say anything. You see, that happens all the time. Especially when it's just someone is naturally has less experience, they're kind of learning, they'll find out when they're getting feedback from the recipient, all this stuff, and they should have said it. And maybe they just thought it were their, usually it's just because they think it's their own. It's an ego type of thing where you're superior to others, or you want to put other people down, or you want all the attention yourself. That's has to do with insecurity. That's not good. However, you have to love yourself and believe in yourself very strongly. Now, not everyone is that way for different reasons. So part of training as a medium, I think it's important for people, and I'm sure you do this because you're very nurturing. If you were running a group, you're probably very encouraging with your students. So even if they lack that confidence, they gradually will acquire it. And the spirit world wants people to do a good job. They want honest mediums. They want ethical mediums. They want people who are there, who really care about other people, who are very compassionate, who are motivated the right way. And they're going to put energy into someone like that. Much more so over somebody who's lacks those motivations.
I like that. I like the way that you spoke about that, about the importance of being nurtured in throughout one's development and having the right conditions.
Well, you're that way, aren't you? I know you're a
know.
mom, right? You're a mom, you're a mother, you're a wife. I mean, you're probably very, very, very nurturing with your students. Like, and I mean, I'd send people to you because of that. You know, I mean, it's a really, really, really good thing. Now, not everyone's like that, you see. I mean, obviously, there's different styles for different folks. People have different qualities. But if we think back at anyone watching this, you know, like when you're in school, maybe very young, there's probably a number of teachers who you're going to remember. Why? Because they really cared. You know, they put energy into you. And I'm sure they might have been very firm in some ways, right? You know, because you have to have the discipline. You can't just have everything loose. That's not good. Too much yin, that's not good. But too much yang isn't good either. There has to be this nurturing. And the spirit world will bring out the best types of qualities. So, you know, you have people who get into this. And like I say, that they've suffered some type of loss. They're trying to heal themselves. And so part of the healing process will be with the development. You know, and maybe even working with other people. You see that too with people, they go to university or college, you know, they study psychology. Why? Because they're trying to fix themselves. Now, the problem is you can end up being a medium. And I sometimes say there's a fine line between being psychic and psychotic. So you have a lot of people who are involved in this. They're just a bit imbalanced. You know, like they don't really work on themselves on a personal level, you know, spiritually, what to speak of on an emotional level, which is really, really, really important. Does that make sense?
It does, and I really like to be able to hear that, because I feel that that's an important aspect that particularly for those starting out in the earlier part of the journey, that they may not understand everything about that. So that's really good aspects to be able to bring through. You talked about in your book some of these techniques to be able to develop some of our clairs, and one of them I thought very interesting was clairaudience, a technique for developing clairaudience. Do you want to go over that?
I'm not sure which one which technique you're talking about.
Well, you talked about a couple of things.
Right here.
You talked about the conch, yes. You talked about the conch shell.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, oh, wow. Well, there's two ways of doing that. I actually have that in both my books. The first book I talked about is this conch shell. In my second book, I'm just suggesting using the glass.
Ah.
You know, so you really can use both. And obviously, you know, what are you hearing? I think it's the blood inside your ears, someone told me once. But, you know, it's within that sound where you can actually start to develop, you know, the ability to be more aware of the spirit voices when they speak to you. So that technique is pretty old. That's not something that I came up with. You know, the conch shell, that's something that's been used. Like, go back 100 years. You know, they were using that to develop clairaudience, which I think is pretty cool.
It's 100 years old. So that's
early. It could be 90 years old. I'm not sure the specific date. 1862, someone devised it, but it is an old technique. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And so allows someone to be able to just sort of tune into these subtle impressions, these subtle vibrations.
It's pretty neat, because the spirit world, it's all around us. And, you know, the more you do in working, raising your own vibration up, the better channel you're going to be. That's what's really, 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 really important, is, you know, work with the altered state, be able to go very, 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 very deep, but also be able to raise your vibration up and then make this connection. And along with that, it's just dissociation, right? Getting yourself out of the way, stepping aside from your physical body and going into that altered state is very, very, very important. And, you know, you see that within indigenous cultures, right? There's always been mediums, healers, you know, people who are intermediaries between the spirit world and the physical world. So,
and when you say that, that's very true, that mediums, those intermediaries exist in all cultures, across all times.
But what's really cool is, you know, within spiritualism, it's very potentially very formalized in terms of the actual training approaches. Not saying, you know, let's say you're studying to be a healer, you probably will apprentice with someone in a traditional culture, and they would have certain ways of going about initiating the person or training that individual. However, what we have in spiritualism, and we actually have, the formative classes and exercises, things like this. It's all very scientific. Now, if you go back in the advent of spiritualism, the early years, how did people develop? Like I say, they just would take people over. They'd find the person with the potential, the chemistry's the right way, and they would produce physical phenomena through them. Or if someone was open and receptive, they would start coming through the person, channeling through them. So it wasn't like there were classes for it or teachers like myself or others who teach this. But what did end up happening is, the spirits would, when they were holding groups, we had off the home circles, families and friends, really closely connected, really high vibration. And the spirits would come through and give instruction and suggestions, to enhance the group. Hey, bring your guitar next week and play it and sing some songs. And when you do that, wow, the energies, it works so much better. See? So there's laws behind, natural laws behind all of this in terms of, so if we understand the mechanics of it, we can approach our development and approach like the application or actually working with the spirit world to bring about the best possible communications with whatever phase of mediumship it might be, whether it's mental or physical or however.
I think that you touched upon some really, really good asks. And what I enjoyed the most, particularly from our talk and from reading your books, is just this ongoing aspect of development and this ongoing working on yourself, the personal development, and sitting and working with spirit and understanding how to work and having those right motives involved.
Yeah, it's really, 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 really important. And it's not really stressed a lot. I think a lot of people, they sort of get into it, like, oh, I'm going to channel dead people and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do evidential readings. And, like they count the pieces of evidence they get and then they compare it to someone else. I mean, it's just all this, it's like some type of like sporting event, where you're competing as an athlete. That's not what it's about. I mean, the whole mentality, I'm not like that at all. I just don't think of it in those types of terms. But I mean, you've got people who've been into it as long as me, or, they've been into it a long time, and that's the way they think. And it's not really like that. I've always felt of it being something that's very holistic. That's something that if you're integrated, holistically on all these different levels and balanced, it's not that you could certainly be imbalanced and not holistic and you could be a good channel, but I think it's really important to be the best possible vehicle you can be for the spirit world, and to approach development that way too. That's one I know with the groups that I teach. Physically people actually present, I always include hands-on healing and spiritual healing because it gives people the right motivation. And I guess the byproduct of working with mediumistic healing is it really enhances the sensitivity so that the other phases of mediumship are going to be able to open up and blossom as well. But I like the healing the most. That's just really, 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 really important.
And as you touched upon that, about the healing aspect, what also occurred to me with that is how it that occurs through love, and so that allows us to sort of develop that faculty.
Yeah, you open up your heart
love.
center when you're working with healing. Different when we talk about different phases of mediumship, right, there's different the energy centers, or right, chakras, right, which is Sanskrit for wheel, right, these energy centers, which correspond to, on a physical level, to various glands within the endocrine system, right, hormonally. So, people always think of the third eye, right, you've got the throat, so, this is clairvoyance, clairaudience, and we've got, the heart, which is very much the healing. Of course, when we get into law of the physical phenomena, it's this heavier, stronger type of vibration. It's dependent on the medium's chemistry, but so much of the power will be drawn from the area of the solar plexus. And you can really feel the difference. If you're working clairvoyantly, it's this very quick, fast. Isn't it quick when you work? Do you get it really quick? I don't think I've ever seen you work, but it probably comes in very, 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 very fast.
It does, absolutely.
Yeah, really fast. You can't shut up. So it's fast. Now, I remember we were talking about clairaudience. So this must have been 7-8 years ago. I remember, anyway, I was in New Zealand where I was living at the time, and I'd been teaching lots of stuff recent, having to do with clairaudience, like different exercises for some workshops. And I remember I went into this one church service there in New Zealand, and every single message that came through was all clairaudient. Now that's just not the way. No, and it was like this sort of slower, moderate rate of vibration compared to how I typically would work, which does include the clairaudience along with the clairsentience and the clairvoyance. But this was just I think it was pretty much just all, I was just hearing it all, which was kind of interesting, you see. But again, it's more with the throat and everything. And with healing, it's with the heart center, and it's a different vibration. Now, healing mediumship is both physical and mental. It's mental because it is dependent upon the subjective, intuitive, mental connection that the medium establishes with God and with those in spirit who are working through. But it's physical because they can use the chemistry to actually physiologically affect the recipient if necessary. Someone has arthritic deposits and they dematerialize them and remove them, this type of thing.
Wow.
But now the other thing too, we talk about physical phenomena, which is solar plexus primarily. We can see a lot of times, someone is working in trance, they're speaking to a person. Of course, they feel a lot through their throat as well, but it's very, very similar vibration to the healing. And a lot of people who work with entrancement, with channeling, not just the automatic writing or drawing or painting, that kind of thing, but the actual speaking part where they'll come through philosophy or bring through communications that way. Oftentimes, that entrancement work, channeling work, is going to lead to the physical. It's almost like a stepping stone. And we also see that a lot of people who work regularly with healing, right? They channel healing energy. Well, they're in an altered state, right? You're in a prayerful state when you're doing the Reiki, I hope. If you're not, there's something wrong. But you want to be in that meditative state. And when you're in that state, it's going to be real easy for you to develop trance. I should say levels of control where they can speak through you. I mean, all mediumship involves altered state or trance. And there's varying degrees of control that take place with it. Does that make sense?
It does, and I actually really enjoyed listening to you talk about that, because I can tell that you're very knowledgeable about.
Well, who's really cool, who I really highly recommend. Actually, I mean, to anyone is, and I actually got to meet her. It was back in '94. I remember in the UK, and her name was Ursula Roberts. Have you read any of Ursula Roberts' books?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you're missing something. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, her books are the best books you can ever read on mediumship. And Ursula Roberts, I believe she must have passed in like 95 or 96. I saw her. Anyway, I met her in this would have been October, or was it September '94? Anyway, she was the guy for Ramadan, who was this Egyptian pharaoh, lived at the time of Moses. And there's some really nice books that you can get that have compilations of the teachings of Ramadan. So he's a spirit teacher. But she worked with healing, and she was a really good clairvoyant. But she wrote all these different books on mediumship, all about mediumship. It was her last book that she wrote, but she had like hints on healing, hints for mediumistic development, spiritual unfoldment. I mean, there's quite a few. I mean, two autobiographies. I mean, there's at least 15 or 20 different books that she's written. A lot of these are kind of like smaller types of books, many of them which are out of print. But her name was Ursula Roberts, and she's different than Estelle Roberts, who was the medium for Red Cloud, or Estelle Roberts, who I knew pretty well, who was a medium who didn't pass that long ago, but she had started the Institute for Spiritualist Mediums in the UK. It's very well known internationally for teaching. So it's like three Roberts, but Ursula Roberts, why I'm talking about her is that, she worked as a trance medium, but she also was a fantastic healer, you see. So there's a real relationship in terms of your development. I don't think it's a good thing to separate the different phases. And you see this in the UK sometimes, this idea that you want to separate, because we want to focus on one type of mediumship. We don't want to dissipate it. We want to really focus it all. We're just going to do this. But really, with a group, the spirits will utilize that energy to unfold all sorts of different aspects, depending what they want to do with the individuals there. And one phase of mediumship harmoniously can kind of evolve and can certainly relate with the development of another. You understand? So, you might be working with clairvoyance, but that's going to enhance the healing, or the healing will enhance your clairaudience. It's all interrelated and connected. You see, not saying it's not a different. It is a different application of the energy and everything. But with development, I mean, for example, in the U.S., typically, if there's the format, it's done an hour and a half. Third is philosophy, right? But the address or sermon. Then you have another third is spirit messages or clairvoyance, right? Demonstrating. And then sometimes in the beginning or sometimes in the middle, there'll be another third of the service, section of the service, which is healing. It builds the power up. Some churches, they do it in the beginning. I remember this one medium says, you need to change the format and have it right before the mediumship. And I did that. It was fantastic because the healing just brought it up. Now you go to the UK, they'll have a healing minute typically, absent healing or distant healing. However, the healing usually is done separately, maybe before or after, maybe even in a separate room, but it's not part of the main service. Now, sometimes that's good, obviously, because you can spend more time if you take someone off to the side and work with them a little bit more than what you'd be able to accomplish during a service. However, it's not part of the regular service. You just have the address and the demonstration. But I'll tell you this, if they were to actually put the healing in the middle somewhere there, it would build the power. But I remember when I first saw it, I was like, why are they doing that? And I kind of looked into it and I was told, well, it's because we have to use, there's this, the power a certain way, and that would be dissipate, would make it somehow adversely affect the clairvoyance or something. It's like, no, it's not. It's the exact opposite. You see? So people can get kind of dogmatic about this stuff. So you have to really, follow what the spirits direct you to do, which may be a bit different than what, some kind of official rule, or people are used to doing things a certain way. Sometimes that's not always the best way to do it. It's all very experimental, and the spirit world is constantly improving upon things and trying to come up with ways of expediting the communication and enhancing the development of individuals. Just with the technology, gosh, compared to, let's say, 35 years ago, 30 years ago. If let's say you're a student of mediumship, there's all these resources. You go on YouTube, right? You can watch this interview, go to your channel, see all this stuff. There's a lot of opportunities for growth, and excessive knowledge is accessible in a way that it wouldn't have been.
By far. That was one of my greatest obstacles early on in my development, is just understanding my experiences, is that there was not that accessibility to information.
Yeah, exactly. Or just, let's say there's some out of print book. Well, some of these out of print books, you can download. People have put them up somewhere, and you can just, you have access to them, which in the past, that might not have been so easy to accomplish, actually finding the particular text and everything.
Stephen, I want to say thank you very much for allowing me to speak with you. You obviously have a lot to be able to talk about further in with you at another point in time, because you just have a lot of experience there. And I'm really very grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak to you about all of your years of experience serving spirit.
Thank you. It's really a great blessing to be able to help out and be on your show or what. I just think it's cool the way you interview all these mediums. I love it, because every single person you interview, they have so much to contribute. It's so valuable, the stuff they're sharing. And if they were to kick the bucket next week, all that stuff would be lost. So 10 years from now, someone can listen to one of these interviews that you're doing right now with someone, and they're going to learn from that. And sometimes the ideas are different. It's not like there's one right way to do it.
Isn't
But
that wonderful?
yeah, it's really that's the best way to learn is you're going to learn different things from different people, and try out and see what actually works the best, and along with the direction that you're actually receiving from the team who's working with you in the world of spirit. So it's a real blessing to be able to be here. And I just think what you're doing is very cool.
Thank you, Steve. And I really enjoyed speaking with you. And I know that there was a little bit of a lag with the streaming. I'm hoping that that the end results is that it streams very well, or that it loads very well. But I want to thank you again, Stephen, for just allowing me to speak with you. I've learned a lot too, and I've really enjoyed this opportunity.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Stephen, if someone wanted to find you, how would they find you?
Well, gosh, you can go to my website, stevehermanmedium.com. You could look me up that way. And, I've got both my books, which are on Amazon, Mediumship Mastery 2, which is what we're talking about, Advanced Techniques That Work. And then I also have my first book, Mediumship Mastery, The Ultimate Guide, The Mechanics of Receiving Spirit Communication. And I do a lot of teaching. I do a lot of, individualized mentoring or coaching. And I have a lot of classes in person, weekend, week long, and all over the place. I work internationally. So get hold of me, email me, and if I can help you in any way, I definitely would go over my way and do it.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Stephen. I'd like to thank you very much again for the pleasure of being able to sit and speak with you. And I wish you very many blessings, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And God bless you. And don't cause too much trouble, just a little.
Okay, Stephen. Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye.